Interestingly, let's talk about customer focus. Hey, I want to tell you something. The next guy in your business, the next up, or the next customer in that dealership that walks. You go find out if your sales manager is going up to that salesperson and saying, tell me something, that one that just walked out the door? Yeah, what was that customer's basic fundamental overriding need? I'll work you up. But 95 of 100 salespeople in this industry can't tell you. They have no idea in hell what the customer's needs are. What if he said, oh, the needs for a four-door, the needs for a red car? I'm not talking about need. The guy came through the door because his kid's leaving for college and he's looking for a car that she or he can get there safe. They came in the car because the neighbor bought a car and they're looking for a status or an image. We don't know that. Customer focused in selling says that we identify the customer's needs from the customer's point of view. And it is a sales management responsibility for everyone who walks out that door to say to the salesperson, what was that customer's need? By the way, I even kid General Motors. I've been to every one of the Chevrolet and all of those great, fantastic systems that you got where you're measuring customer satisfaction of the people who bought the car. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to measure customer satisfaction of the people who didn't buy the car.
A core question to ask about the audience is what problem they have that you may address in your presentation. The ideal here is a big question that everyone has. In practice, though, you may need to show them that they have a problem, and then only some of them may be affected. You need to know who you're talking to. You need to know what your audience wants, what they need, and what their background knowledge is as well. This is true for public speaking, of course. It's true for teaching as well. You need to know what your students know, what they've learned, what their background knowledge is, and also their profiles, a bit about their personalities, their psychology. This helps a lot make you a better teacher and have much better connections with your students. Some ways we divide up our audience, things to some factors about them, is their socioeconomic level. Now, obviously, elementary school students, they don't have jobs, but their parents do, and wealth is a big dividing factor in that. And it's something to be aware of. If you're teaching at a small school up in the mountains, the students are less likely to come from families with a lot of money and a lot of more resources. So it's something to be aware of. And their parents might both be working, so they don't have the time to curate their children as much, to take care of things. And then also, of course, education level, their knowledge level. Now, with adults, this is very important, knowing what they've learned about. But if we think of it not just as accreditation of degrees and diplomas, but more of what they know. So obviously, let's think about first graders versus sixth graders. Sixth graders have had more schooling. They know more things. And so you'll need to, it's very obvious, but you need to recognize that they know more things, and you need to change your presentation style. You need to talk to them differently. You need to teach them differently because they are not the same. And then obviously, the background knowledge level with, say, English or with any subject, some students have been learning that particular subject their whole life, while others might have just started at the school itself. And so some people might know a lot, and some students might know very, very little or nothing. And it's something that you should become aware of and adjust your teaching appropriately. I believe I mentioned this before, but when I taught little first graders at San Miguel Elementary School, Some of those students had no English whatsoever. Zero. Absolute beginners. Zero English. Other students spoke it fluently, like a native speaker. So those students were in the same class. So I had to adjust accordingly because the beginner had to start, but then the English speaker had to be challenged in their own way, had to keep pushing them in their own way. Things to be aware of. Nationality, Korea being Korea, still, yeah, you're dealing with Korean students, but there are growing, the demographics are changing, a lot more international parents are in Korea. And depending on where you are, you quite possibly will have children who are not Korean, not even Korean citizens. Say, for example, if you were to, I know in Gangwon province, in Hwaengsung, for example, or in Wonju, there are a significant number of foreign workers who have children, they have family. And those, particularly from Central Asia, like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And they have, a different cultural background and different knowledge and all those wonderful things that you'll need to be aware of and take into account for their lessons. So it's things to watch out for. I'm reminded, one of my friends, when she was teaching in Sokcho, a Korean teacher, she was at the time she was third grade, teaching a homeroom teacher for a third grade elementary school. One of her students, the student's father, was a Korean sailor, so he was away from home quite often, and his mother was Russian, who didn't speak Korean, and so the boy didn't speak Korean, and he was in third grade, and it was a huge challenge to try to figure out how to get him started learning Korean, because it was only going to get harder and harder. He had to start learning when he was, when things were still relatively easy, because you get to sixth grade and it's all over, and he has to go to school legally. He must. So these are challenges we should be aware of in knowing our audience. Age ranges are a thing as well. Now, within one class, obviously, it's a much smaller range. But if you have after-school classes, things like that, you might have to deal with a mixed group of ages. And, sixth graders, fifth graders, fourth graders, and things like that. And sensitivities do come up. And so it's something to be aware of. Adults can also be very sensitive about ages. Right now I'm teaching an evening class over Zoom with community members down in Gijang-gun. It's part of by Busan. And, the age ranges are from about 30 to, I think, about 70. That's a huge age range of people with different background knowledge. The 7-year-old didn't have to study, didn't have to study English when they went to school, but the 25-year-old had to learn English and has had native speaking English teachers for most of their educational career. So very different experiences, and so teaching them in the same group is a challenge, to say the least. So affiliations, knowing what they're part of. For example, this might be I'll say religious affiliations. Samyuk Elementary School, the Samyuk schools, and they are religious. They are Seventh-day Adventist. It's a kind of Christianity, but it's a bit different. They go to church on Saturday, not Sunday, for example, and depending on how religious they are, they don't eat meat. They eat healthy foods only, and depending on really how religious you are, it depends on what you do and what you say and how you live. And so basically, so at Samyuk Elementary School in Chincheon, there's all the lunches are vegetarian, because that's just how it is. But most of the students are not Seventh-day Adventist. But when you're dealing in that kind of place, it's a different environment. And one of the classes they have, the ethics class, is taught by the pastor, the Moksanim. And so he brings in, religious metaphors and stories. And so the students have, even if they don't really appreciate it or like it, they have some knowledge of the Bible, which allowed me to use a lot more biblical English, because the Bible is a huge influence on the English language in our vocabulary and our metaphors and our proverbs. So it's something to be aware of. If these, because of their affiliations, they have more background knowledge, which allowed me to teach them more than I would have been able to teaching them at a regular public school, for example. Or would I be able to teach you? Because I don't know that you've all had the same classes about religion, because you haven't. So I know that. Of course, gender, and the time will come up where, if it's just boys together or just girls together, their group dynamic, their group personality is different, and teaching them is different. Last year, I taught after school classes at a girls' high school, and it was a very different experience, because everyone was just everyone was just so nice and quiet, and nobody was punching each other, which can happen it can happen with girls too, but boys do it a bit more often. And so you're dealing with with mixed groups or separate groups, it changes the dynamic. And if you prepare material, your lesson, your speech, for a mixed group, but it's all females, it's all women or girl students, then your material is not going to go over as well. So it's something you'll need to bear in mind. A great example of this that I found, the computer game, the video game Overwatch, which used to be very popular, but it's an old busted game now, I guess. Overwatch has enough characters who are different from each other that you will find one character, at least, that you really, really like. It doesn't matter that you like the game or not, but you will find one character who you really like. Blizzard was very smart when they made that game. Very smart. Because you think about the characters they made. They made the characters mostly for who they knew was going to play the game. Who's going to play the game? Okay, North Americans, so you have American characters. Hispanic characters, so you have people from Mexico or elsewhere. And then you have a lot of Asian characters, because Overwatch was going to be very popular in East Asia, particularly in Korea. So we have D.Va. Japan, so we have Hanzo and other guy. And in China, which had Mei. And they all look very different. They have different body types, different kinds of clothing. Mei has glasses. So what I found is that everybody could find somebody that they liked a lot. And at the very least, you had a robot or a gorilla to like as well. So those things, Blizzard was very smart in trying to get a mass audience. So they could segment out, and each person could find something that they identified with, and they got a lot more people to become interested in to play the game at first. Religion is something else to bear in mind. Ethnicity as well. Korea's population of mixed children has been growing quite a lot over the past 3 decades. And if you go to some schools out in the countryside, a majority of students of the small population there are international marriages or mixed children of usually Korean father and a non-Korean mother. And so it's something to bear in mind. And we've seen this in the class textbooks and curriculum. The definition of what a Korean is has been broadened to become more of a cultural of thought, not just of pure blood. When I first came to Korea and I asked students, what is a Korean? The answer I was usually given was, If you're born in Korea and your parents are Korean, then you're Korean. So, by that definition, a lot of people would not be Korean. Ibn Bak would not be Korean because he was born in Japan. But you know how it goes. Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un's father would not be Korean because he was born in Russia. I know North Korea said he was born at Baekdusan, but I don't believe him. The Russians have a birth certificate that say he was born in Siberia. So, I trust the Russians more on that one. But ethnicity does play a role because it does affect things and about their past experience. Religion, mentioned before about, there's different kinds of Christianity to be aware of. We have a small, but I say growing population of Muslim students, and they have different religious beliefs. Most of it's compatible and not a great problem, but most of it's diet. Muslims don't eat pork. That's all. Another area to be aware of is family circumstance of our audience, of our students, and maybe they're not living with mom and dad anymore. Maybe they're living with grandparents. Maybe they're living with mom. Maybe we don't know what's going on. So it's something to be aware of, especially when we're teaching about family and what our parents do and things that used to be very, how should I say, a very safe lesson topic can be very emotional for some students. Talking about what your dad does as a job. If their father's not in their life anymore, not a happy thing to talk about. So it's something to try to be aware of. I think when you're teaching your students, this won't be a problem for you. You'll be more easily made aware of. You won't be like me and just not know until it's too late. Psychological profiles, just how their personalities are. How they work together, how individuals work. Can students, can they do certain tasks? Not if they're physically capable or if they're mentally intelligent enough, but can, for example, there was a boy who he couldn't share things. Like he wasn't bad. He just, if you did something where you had to share with another person, he would not share. He couldn't share. The lesson we did was we were taste testing different drinks, and I gave little tiny cups with different drinks, and they had to describe the flavor, using flavorful words, and try to identify what the drink was, because it'd be like Chilsung cider, Coca-Cola, Coke Zero, McCool, things like that, And the boy's best friend in class came to me before we started the lesson. He asked, "Can I be with another student?" Because Bobby doesn't know how to share. And so he didn't want to be with his best friend because he wanted to, enjoy the lesson and try to do it. And so it's something to be aware of with working students. Something that when you're working with especially young students, first graders, when first graders come to school, they are, it's a big change for them. Now, yes, I know they've been to, the kindergarten, daycare, things like that. But, that's not really school. So they need to adjust from being the most important person in the world to not being the most important person in the world. So, because if you, this is how it is with first graders, at home, they're the most important person in the whole world, in the history of the world. They're the most important, especially if they're an only child. Then they go to school, and now they're with 30 other students, 30 other children, who are also the most important person in the world, in the history of the world. And that's, that creates some conflict with students who don't know how to share, who don't know how to who how should I say, don't know how to respond healthily to the word no and things being denied to them. They're not used to that, and they need to learn that. So it's things to be aware of. Power and status, this is mostly less for students, elementary school students, in my experience. It's more for when you teach adults or older audiences, people who have had achievement, things like that. If I talk to you like I talk to first grade elementary school students, you would feel insulted, and that's fair, because you are not that. You have achieved more. So it's things. If you're talking to an audience of, let's say, school principals and superintendents and things like that. Superintendent is the 교육감, and so it's something that we need to be aware of who our audience is and being properly polite to them. Other things to take in mind: their first language. Now, in Korea, their first language is most probably going to be Korean. That's good. But that's no longer 100% the case. So it's something that we need to be aware of, and working with that. When we give instructions or ask questions in English or in a second language, an unknown, in a different language than their mother language, it takes time to process what's being said. The students have to take in the question, they hear it, and then they have to mentally translate it into their language, think about it, and then translate an answer, and then say the answer. And that takes some seconds, so a bit more patience is required if you're dealing with students who are not working in their first language. Preferred learning styles, you learn a lot more about this later on, but there's people who learn visually, people who learn with audio, people who learn by doing things. It's good to mix things around. But also their attention span. How long can they sit and watch you or read at one time? For example, this class is 2 periods long. It's 100 minutes technically. And so these online lectures need to be 50 minutes long. And here I am talking to you over the voice. But, I don't know what you're actually saying, things like that. So you need to be aware of how long people can pay attention to you. You need to change up your styles, change up your voice, change up your activities at regular intervals, at regular times, to make sure kids don't fall asleep or just get bored and start stabbing each other. That can happen at middle school very easily. So it's something to be aware of. Asking students to for foreign language classes, asking students to have like 3-hour classes without breaks, that's very difficult because it's mentally exhausting. When I was having my immigration classes, I worked at Samyuk until 5 p.m. and then at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. I had Korean language and culture classes at Kangwon University. And we had a break, but it was hard. It was a lot of it. And I didn't eat dinner, and I just until I got back home at 11, and so it was mentally tiring. So there's a lot of that I don't remember. And then also we have the idea of time expectations. This relates with attention span. If the students are expecting to have a break, every hour, then they're going to stop paying attention. And you don't take that break. It's something you need to be aware of and have a set schedule. It helps students out a lot, and it'll help you out a lot. And you're able to pause, drink water, rest your mind, and recollect your thoughts, and decompress as well. And then sometimes we need to think about how knowledgeable they are in the subject, especially your subject. They also might know more about it than you. I'll give the example of grammar. In that I didn't study, like for example, I didn't study grammar until I had to teach English. I learned grammar, sure, but I didn't know grammar. I couldn't explain grammar. I just knew like, oh, this is right and that's wrong, because I couldn't explain things. Also, for example, I didn't know why we said certain things a certain way in pronunciation of English, because I was born with it. I didn't have to learn it. I just knew it. So this is very true with people who are very good at other languages, and they've had to study it, and they've been tested on it as well, and so they've had to display their knowledge. And so it's something that you might need to be aware of sometimes, usually when you're teaching adults, but it can happen with students as well. They might know things that you don't know. We think that's a great travesty, that teachers should know everything, but it's not possible, because we're teaching and we're not able to stay on, up to date on everything. It's just life. That's why we invented computers, and we're finding out that AI is much better at reading and taking information and remembering things than humans are. So that can be a possibility, but it is important to know prior existing knowledge. How much do students know about what you're already talking about? Because if you're teaching a lesson and they already learned that lesson, you're going to have a frustrating time at the least. Then also to be aware of how much do they care about your subject? And then how can you stimulate interest? Now, English by itself is only a means for most people, a means to talk about things. Korean is the same as well. But if you really want to learn Korean history, what must you do? You must learn Korean, and you must learn some amount of Hanja as well. That you have to know these things. You have to learn about Confucianism. You have to learn about Buddhism, because those have huge influences on Korean history and can help explain why people did what they did. Because, humans are not rational, logical creatures most of the time. A lot of this, well, you can say all the time. We are influenced by things we've learned and things we believe in, even if those things aren't rational in of themselves. So, so knowing how much interest your students have in the subject you're teaching, or how you can raise their interest, is important. Then also, something to be aware of is what's likely to be on their mind at the moment. Now, obviously, we can't read their minds, but we're teaching. If we have class on Fridays at 4 p.m., what are students going to be thinking about? Are they thinking, wow, I'm so ready for this class, I'm going to study really hard? Or are they thinking about Friday evening, going home, eating chicken, and eating more chicken? Those are factors we need to be aware of how the students, how the audience are thinking and what they're thinking about. If there is some big event, that will distract their minds. And it's things to be aware of. So, to help us know our audience, it helps us to actually learn about who they are. Know who you're going to be talking to before you talk to them. As much as you can. And even then, working with students, it's more, this is easier. If you're teaching adults, it's a bit harder. But this is something when I teach adults, I ask a lot more information about who are they, how old are they, what are their levels, education level, what job are these workers, or are they not working? Are they learning English for their job or not for their job? Are they going to be tested in English? Why are they learning? And this provides me with a lot of information so I can better prepare the lessons for the students. If you're presenting in a room, think about how big the room is, how small, how are the seats laid out. Think how the classroom is set up. If you're teaching in the library versus teaching in the classroom versus teaching in the cafeteria, those are all different environments with different things to distract students with. So being aware of where you're going to teach is helpful, and where you're going and who you're going to teach, present to. I'm using those interchangeably. Things that help as well. Getting personal, making some basic connections, knowing names. I know some students' names in these first 3 weeks, but most I don't. But knowing names of students is very helpful. Not nicknames. But knowing their real name. Because if you have to correct behavior, knowing their real name is much more helpful. So, and people respond to you trying to remember their names. If you don't remember their names, it hurts your relationship. Not, it doesn't destroy it, but it does affect it. I'll give an example I can remember. When I used to work in Yangyang, there is still a teacher training program at the facility that involves, at the time it was 2 months in America, in Seattle. And so the head of that program, it's effectively like a kind of hagwon. He would come over to Yangyang every year and say hello to just make sure that he stayed in business. I met him 4 times. And every time, he didn't remember me at all. And so by the 3rd time, I didn't like him at all. I thought he was an idiot and who was bad at his job. So when it came time to talk about if the institution, I'll say school in Yangyang, time to stay with that company or go to another company, my voice was change another company, because that guy can't, because of my personal interaction with the head of the company. Now, that's not, it's petty, but it is a reason. So he was trying to get personal and he failed completely. So be aware of that. Try to remember things and remember names if you can. But creating connections with people, with your audience, is very important. And of course, with teaching, you'll have a lot more opportunity to do this. But it's good to do it quickly. Next, they called it the Milton Berle technique. Milton Berle was a comedian who was dead by the time I was born. He's really old, but his technique is something that is helpful in that he would open up his public appearances with a diverse offering of jokes. He would use different jokes and see how the audience reacted. And depending on how they reacted, then he would go with that material. So you can try with different different approaches, different kinds of jokes, different kinds of openings, different kinds of speech hooks. And depending on how the audience reacts, go with what works. And if something doesn't work, don't do that. That helps. And of course, know what they know. We've talked about this a lot. Know what they know. But don't talk below their level of knowledge, obviously. Then you're wasting their time. And also don't talk above their level of knowledge either, because then you're wasting their time as well. And that's no good. There is a grammarian, a grammatician, grammar scientist named Stephen Krashen. And he has the acquisition theory that some people disagree with now, but it's pretty comprehensible. And that in order to acquire new language, new words, we need to have what's called I+1, as in your intelligibility level, what you understand, plus 1 level more difficult. If it's 5 levels more difficult, you can't understand anything. So this is why we think about like first graders. First grade English is really quite simple because it needs to be comprehensible. But 6th grade English is a lot more. And so a first grader who's good at first grade English goes into 2nd grade English, they'll be okay. It's I+1. But if they go into 6th grade English, it's not going to work at all. They're going to get overwhelmed. They're going to shut down mentally and not be able to learn anything. So knowing what your students know, knowing what your audience knows, allows you to build that +1 to make things a little more challenging, and then they'll improve and get better. And this one's the most difficult for lots of people, including myself. You are not the most important person in the classroom. But not really. You are the most important person. You're the star. But you're not. You need to make sure that the material, the lesson is the most important and your students are learning. So you need to be confident and know what you're talking about, but not overconfident who just has a 3-hour lecture of them just talking. I'll include some examples, videos. So make sure it's about the presentation, not about you. Hello everyone. This is a short video about making videos and what we can do to help make our videos better and how they can look better and sound better. Right now I'm talking to you with this camera, but I have this camera set up as well, so you can see how things look differently. And I've got a microphone, but both cameras have microphones as well. So I have 3 recordings going on right now. And we're going to compare each one. How it looks, how it sounds, how the different lighting setups help make things look and sound and feel different. So let's take a brief overview. Now, things to consider. Camera angle. What does the camera see? Now, my main camera, you see my face, you see the back of my chair, you see the general background. But with the GoPro, what do you see? You're looking down on me, and you see all the clutter around me. You see, here's a Monster Energy. Oh, there's still some left. There's a Monster Energy drink here. So, how you place your camera matters a lot. And here are some other examples I have filmed with my cell phone and my iPad. Versus this. This looks like something. You can see here how it looks. Another thing to bear in mind. Where are you filming? Now, you can see my backdrop here is I'm in a dark room. But if I were to film in front of the window, what would you see? And you can see that here. The window in the back, but light off, we can't see very well at all. Let's talk about lighting. Now, I believe on the GoPro, you can see I use a ring light as my main source of light. It provides nice, even lighting. But what if we were to turn that off and just use the monitor? How does that look? Not very good. So let's bring in some natural light. How does that look? Now it's looking better. This camera is making it look better, and the GoPro. But how does my face look? Now, the right side of my face is much more in shadow, obviously. It's natural light. We'll bring that back down and make it halfway. It looks different. It feels different. If we turn on the ceiling light, you can see here, it feels different, and there's a lot of light coming in off my hair. And that mixed with the light from the sun, everything looks a bit different. And we mix that in with the ring light. I look tired. I look a bit sick. I don't look that good. Now, I don't expect you to get a ring light, but I want us to see how things look and feel. This ring light has different settings. This is the regular setting, the white light, and that's how it looks. It's like a bright fluorescent light in my face. It has blue, which looks like a monitor, and very warm light. I like the warm light. I think it looks better for my skin, especially if it's the only source of light, the main source of light. That's how it looks. I think it looks a lot better this way than it does with the other settings. But if you play with your lights, play with and try to figure out what's the best way for you to look, and what looks best for you, you can see and experiment and figure out what's best for you. There's different settings, of course, as well. Now, let's talk about sound. Sound is important. I have 3 recording devices right now, but I'm really just going to use one, the one with the condenser microphone, which you can see. So I'm talking into this. This has a pop filter for those B and P things. How does it sound with just the big camera, the on-camera microphone? Let's give a listen right now. So make sure that when we're talking very clearly with radishes and watermelons and all those wonderful things. Radishes and watermelons, radishes, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish. That's with the DSLR microphone. But what did the GoPro pick up on that? And we can hear the difference. We can hear how it sounds. So make sure that when we're talking very clearly with radishes and watermelons and all those wonderful things. Radishes and watermelons, radishes, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish. Now, one option that I offered to you was using a cell phone to record your audio separately, to use it like a microphone. So let's try this again. Let's compare the cell phone with the different microphones. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa pa pa. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa pa pa. Editing. Editing can help you go from looking like an absolute idiot who's angry and stupid to looking like you know what you're talking about. Just cutting out your mistakes. That's the wonderful thing about video. You might have seen this, if you think about YouTubers. You see YouTubers when they try to go on Twitch and stream, they're not the same. They're not as funny because streaming is a different skill. And so is editing. If you need to edit, and you should edit, you should edit out your mistakes or your, unfortunate sounds like that. You need to make things better. So when we make videos, especially video lessons, you can try multiple takes. If you have difficulty saying something try again and try again and try again until you're happy with one of them. And then you can choose, the good ones and then use them. If you're making a 15-minute video, then that's a lot of effort. If you're making a 30-second video, yes, you can do that. Perfectly good, perfectly normal, all those wonderful things. It's great. So here are some examples. Oh, actually, here's one short example of a testimonial I did for a company that makes headphone pads and things like that. Anyways, I did that. Here is the final version. The Wicked Cushion earpad covers are a great option if you're like me and you sweat a lot. They come off real easy and they pop on real easy as well. They clean with the... It's not very good, but that's okay. Here's the stuff I cut out. The earpad covers by Wicked Cushion are a real option for you if you're like me and you sweat a lot, but you still like listening. You sweat a lot. The Wicked Cushion... God damn it. The Wicked Cushion earpad covers... The Wicked... Yeah. That happens. So things... Be aware also of sound, how you're recording. Be aware of background noise. What is the microphone picking up? Now, let me just do something real fast and see if it comes in. So I've opened the window. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it. There's cars outside. There's wind. All those things making noise. And that background noise can be annoying for the audience. So try to make it easy for your audience to hear you. All right. Those are some general tips to help us make some videos. In the assignment online, I gave you some free software, open source software that you can use for free. So please take a look and play with those, start playing with them, and hopefully this has been helpful for you, just to provide examples of what can look good and what cannot. All right, thank you.